This conversation is powered by Google Illuminate. Check out illuminate.google.com for more. Today's discussion delves into Stephen Krashen's influential work, Principles and Practice in Second Language Acquisition. It's a cornerstone text in the field, and we're going to unpack its key ideas.
Indeed, it's a book that continues to shape how we understand and approach second language teaching.
One of the central concepts is the acquisition-learning distinction. Can you elaborate on that for our listeners?
Absolutely. Krashen argues that we acquire language subconsciously, like children learning their first language, and we learn language consciously through formal instruction. These are distinct processes.
So acquisition is intuitive, while learning is more analytical?
Precisely. Acquired competence is implicit, you just know the language. Linguistic competence is explicit, you can articulate the rules. Krashen emphasizes that acquisition is the primary driver of fluency.
And error correction plays a different role in each?
Yes, error correction is largely ineffective for acquisition. It's more helpful for refining learned knowledge. Think of it like this. You can't teach someone to ride a bike by correcting their every wobble. They need to experience and internalize the process.
That's a great analogy. So if acquisition is key, how does it actually happen?
That's where the input hypothesis comes in. Krashen proposes that we acquire language when we understand input that's slightly beyond our current level, what he calls I+1. We use context and background knowledge to bridge the gap.
So it's not about drilling grammar rules, but about comprehending meaningful input?
Exactly. Think of caretaker speech. Parents don't explicitly teach grammar, but they adjust their language to make it comprehensible to the child, naturally providing I+1.
And this applies to adult learners as well?
Absolutely. Foreigner talk and teacher talk serve a similar function, simplifying language to aid comprehension.
Another important hypothesis is the natural order hypothesis. What does that entail?
This suggests that language acquisition follows a predictable sequence. Certain grammatical structures are acquired earlier than others, regardless of the learner's first language. This isn't a prescription for teaching, but an observation about the natural process.
So teaching shouldn't necessarily follow this order?
Correct. The focus should be on comprehensible input, not on artificially sequencing grammatical structures.
Let's move on to the monitor hypothesis. How does this fit into the picture?
The monitor hypothesis explains how learned knowledge interacts with acquired knowledge. Learned knowledge acts as a monitor, editing our output after it's generated by the acquired system.
So it's a kind of self-editing function?
Yes, but it's limited. Effective monitoring requires time, focus on form, and knowledge of the relevant rule. It's not something that's readily available during spontaneous conversation.
So fluency comes primarily from acquisition, not conscious grammar application?
Precisely. Fluency is a product of acquisition. The monitor can enhance accuracy, but it doesn't drive fluency.
And what about the role of emotions and attitudes?
That's where the effective filter hypothesis comes in. This suggests that anxiety, lack of motivation, and low self-confidence can create a filter that prevents comprehensible input from being processed for acquisition.
So a positive learning environment is crucial?
Absolutely. A low anxiety environment where learners feel comfortable taking risks is essential for successful language acquisition.
Let's talk about the factors that influence second language acquisition success. Krashen argues that they're not direct causes, right?
Correct. While factors like instruction, exposure, and age correlate with success, the true positive variables are comprehensible input and a low effective filter. Instruction helps when it's the primary source of comprehensible input, especially for beginners.
So the amount of time spent in a country doesn't guarantee success?
Not necessarily. It's the quality of interaction and the comprehensibility of the input that matters. Someone could live in a country for years and still not acquire much language if they don't have meaningful interactions.
And age? Is it a major factor?
Age is a complex factor. Adults may progress faster initially, but children often achieve higher levels of ultimate attainment. This might be due to differences in input and effective filter strength.
Schumann's acculturation hypothesis suggests that acculturation is a major factor. How does that relate to Krashen's ideas?
Schumann's hypothesis aligns with Krashen's in that acculturation facilitates comprehensible input and a low effective filter. Social immigration leads to more interaction and opportunities for understanding.
So it's not acculturation itself, but the increased comprehensible input and reduced anxiety it brings?
Exactly. Krashen's framework is more general, encompassing various ways to achieve comprehensible input and a low effective filter, not just acculturation.
Let's discuss the characteristics of optimal input for acquisition.
Optimal input needs to be comprehensible, interesting, and relevant. It shouldn't be grammatically sequenced, and it needs to be provided in sufficient quantity. The learning environment should be low anxiety.
So traditional methods like grammar translation and audiolingualism fall short?
They often do. They tend to overemphasize grammar rules and drills, neglecting the importance of meaningful communication and comprehensible input.
How does Krashen suggest we incorporate grammar instruction?
Krashen advocates for using grammar as a monitor, a tool for self-editing, but only when appropriate. When there's time, focus on form and knowledge of the rule. It shouldn't interfere with communication.
So grammar instruction should be selective, focusing on easily learned rules?
Yes, and it's important to remember that learning doesn't automatically translate into acquisition. Many learners know rules but still make errors because they haven't acquired the underlying competence.
How does various language teaching methods fare according to Krashen's framework?
Methods like the natural approach and total physical response, TPR, align better with Krashen's principles. They prioritize comprehensible input and delay speaking until learners are ready. They've shown greater success in empirical studies compared to older methods.
And Suggestopedia?
Suggestopedia also aligns well, emphasizing a relaxed and positive learning environment to lower the affective filter and facilitate acquisition.
Beyond the classroom, what are some effective ways to promote second language acquisition?
Meaningful conversations with native speakers and pleasure reading are highly effective. They provide ample, comprehensible input in a low-anxiety environment. Using subject matter as a vehicle for language instruction, like in immersion programs, is also very successful.
So the key takeaway is that focusing on comprehensible input, creating a positive learning environment, and using grammar strategically as a monitor are crucial for effective second language acquisition.
Precisely. It's about fostering a natural, communicative environment that allows learners to develop their language abilities organically.
That was a great discussion. Thank you.